Hello and welcome to Noni, Yanga's flagship talk show where we discuss all the hot topics. Today we're marking the 58-year anniversary of Nigerian independence by discussing Nigeria's contribution to the world of fashion, music and culture. Joining me today, associate political campaigner Susan Fajana Thomas and award-winning DJ and media consultant Abbas Tijani. Mommy, Daddy, welcome.
What an intro.
With over 250 different ethnic groups and a population of almost 200 million. Love us or loathe us, Nigeria is truly a beacon of the African continent. From having one of the biggest movie industries in the world to music that is enjoyed on every continent, it would be difficult to condemn Nigeria's global influence. However, we can't deny that the majority of Nigerians in Nigeria live below the poverty line, and religious warfare is still a serious issue in some parts of the country. We're asking today, what does Nigerian independence mean to you? Let me go to the big daddy, the king of Nigerian independence parties and celebrations. And I'm sure many people will be going to your events over the forthcoming week and weekend.
Indeed.
What does Nigerian independence mean?
It's a time to reflect. Over the past few years, there are so many, you alluded to, music, fashion, the movies, the culture, and we've moved in leaps and bounds. But the political and economic terrain is still struggling. On so many economic indices, Nigeria is not doing very, very well. And most recently on the poverty index, we're kind of right up there.
Yeah, we overtook India, which is shocking.
On the basis of potential, we should be nowhere near that. And so it's a time of reflection. You know, we smile with the goodies and we frown with the baddies.
Sister Susan, let me bring it to you. What does Nigerian independence mean to you? I know you're there frequently. You were even in Ekiti observing the election. Is it a time of celebration?
It is a time of celebration. The reason I've said that, it is 1st of October will remain significant to Nigerians because that is the day back in 1960 that Nigeria was granted full independence. It was the day that we now become self-reliant in terms of government. That's that day welcome our self-government is symbolic to us. So it is a day that we celebrate and give thanks give thanks. But having said that, there are challenges. There are kids on the street who are hungry, salaries are not paid, or there are terrorism in the northern part of the country. So as we celebrate, we need to reflect. We need to make that day. Personally, I want to see the 1st of October becomes like a day where we are waiting for the president to speak, just like the way we wait for the Queen at the opening of Parliament here, the Queen's speech. A day that major policies will be announced, a day that changes, initiative that will progress Nigeria will be announced. It's not just about reminiscence. The president come up and say, oh, we're now 58 years old, let's come together and jolly jolly. It's not about jolly jolly. As Abbas said, it is a time of reflection for us, where we've come from, where we are going, and how we're going to move towards or where we are going as a
Sister
nation.
Susan, I can tell you are a politician.
Political mode.
That was a really political campaign speech. But no, would you say, Abbas, that Nigerian Independence Day is a political day? And should it be a political day?
It's more than that. It represents every facet of our existence. So for some, it's political.
Our existence for 58 years.
Yes, and obviously we're looking towards the big six. So, but then, like I said, what brings real meaning to it is the advancements we make. And like I alluded to earlier, right now, election season, as you can see, and the general conversation is how do we present ourselves forward doing this? I still think our electorate still need a lot to learn. The electorate ultimately determines, the quality of the electorate determines the quality of your leadership.
Of course, we see that in the US.
And over the last few elections, we've heard, over the last few elections, you can see things like buying votes. It became a major talking point. And in the midst of all the crises we have right now, I think the real chase should be for that person, new person, or to have that commitment towards whoever is the incumbent who wants to get back. What kind of plans do you have in place? Real plans. You know, poverty is real in Nigeria.
Oh, it's real.
There is no two ways about it. So yes, we will celebrate the good things. We have to. We have advanced in certain. Ironically, when the economy was rebased a few years ago, and Nigeria was, you know, ranked the #1 nation in terms of resource, in terms of income in Africa. Entertainment played a major role in that.
Of course,
and what that tells you that in terms of potential, industries can grow if fed and given an enabling environment.
Do you know what, you're right, but the word that just really frustrates me and will frustrate lots of our viewers, not just the younger ones, all of them, is potential. Why are we always putting Nigeria in and potential, or, you know, there's opportunity? We want it now. In fact, the youth, they wanted it yesterday. Why are we constantly saying potential, potential? Is that just rubbish?
Do you want me to respond to that? And my
Please.
response to that, when you Google Nigeria or talk to anybody about Nigeria and they pick up the 5 things that makes Nigeria popular or what Nigerians are known for, 2 of those are negative. And the 2 of the negatives one is about terrorism, about the security, and about corruption. And those are the 2 things that are actually putting us as a nation that
we thought we were getting better, but
a nation of potentials rather than a nation that is achieving. We want to get to a stage where we have leaders that are accountable, leaders that are able to fight corruption. Corruption is everywhere. It's not about Nigerian issue, but it is epidemic in Nigeria. And Nigeria, we got systemic failure in Nigeria because of corruption. That's what makes corruption in Nigeria worse than most nations of the world. If we're able to deal with those 2, the security of Nigeria in terms of people going there, having that assurance, having that security,
Just feeling
that
safe
that they're
to travel back home.
doing their business there, and people and corruption in every area of Nigeria, every aspect of our system.
And not just in politics.
Not just in politics, it's everywhere.
Even with the gate man and the driver.
Exactly.
Let me turn this on its head before we go to the break. I do want to talk about the successes. And it's not that we've been condemning Nigeria. We're just having an honest discussion. You've both got grown-up children.
Indeed.
Why are so many young children, including people like myself, I'm not that young, but why do we want to go back?
Why don't they want to go back?
Why do we? Even though we see all these negatives, people complain, we still say, I'm finished with England. I want to go back. What is drawing people back home to Nigeria?
The Nigerian identity and psyche is an extremely powerful one. I believe the average Nigerian is the strongest human being on earth. Because, no, trust me.
I receive it.
If you live in Lagos, I'm a Lagos boy. At times, a whole day in Lagos, you can spend 5 hours in traffic.
Yeah.
There's a story of someone who was dropped off at the airport coming to London, which is a 6-hour flight, and she arrived in London, called home, and the lady who dropped her off was still in traffic. You know, people on a day-to-day basis, people have to deal with so much. You know, but then if you balance that against them, especially who we are, like first generation Nigerian diasporans who were born here but went back and lived the Nigerian experience.
Yeah.
You know, and even our children who go back on holidays, my children always say, look, December, are we going this year? You know, they look forward to it. So there's that strand, really, that still connects us strongly to Nigeria. And the potential is there to see. So many Nigerians are thriving all over the world.
We are.
But the problem is we've not been able to harness this via leadership, because this is what proper leadership does. Pick all your strengths, put them together, and create a programmatic thrust that can lift everybody.
And clearly people are no longer accepting, you know, tomorrow or next week. They want it now. Still to come, we discuss the value of the Nigerian diaspora. See you after the break. Welcome back to Nonny. Now, millions have emigrated from Nigeria to cover every part of the world. These migrants and their descendants make up the Nigerian diaspora. The estimations of the Nigerian diaspora vary greatly and are thought to range upwards of 10 million people. Just how valuable are these communities to people back home? How valuable are they? And do you think people are sometimes scared about going back home because it's like, you must bring this. We don't want to see your face. We can see your face on WhatsApp video call. Bring money, bring goods, bring blah, blah, blah.
Well,
is it a strain?
Numbers don't lie. Just last year, it was estimated that the Nigerian diaspora remitted in excess of 22 million pounds back to Nigeria.
Wow.
And that's money that can be tracked through remittances. I believe it's actually triple that. If we look at you and I who go home and still have the odd quid in our,
cash. Yeah.
So I believe if you take that money out of Nigeria, the country would collapse. The diaspora is extremely important. And most nations, especially developing nations, look at the tiger economies. When they were going to get out of poverty, they relied heavily on their diaspora who had gained experience, a lot of knowledge in specialist fields to come back home and help build the country. That is what has been missing so far. I had a political candidate guest on my show recently who was saying if he got in, he would create like a diaspora fund. Because if I've lived in a stable environment for so long and I want to go and help my motherland, I don't want what I have here to collapse as a result of that.
That's an issue.
Yeah,
That's an issue because of the salaries.
Yeah, exactly. Many want the salaries, the mortgages, the children. But if there's a fund that can cover a certain percentage of that cost, and then the other percentage I will take as my patriotic contribution, then I'll be willing to go back home. The Nigerian diaspora is powerful.
Yeah.
Estimates are like 10.
That's one option of many options that could, draw people back home. But Sister Susan, do you feel like the political leadership and people in Nigeria value the diaspora? Do you think people at home value those of us that have travelled abroad?
The answer is yes, I think they do, but and the yes stops there. Most people in Nigeria, in particular the politicians, see some of the Nigerians from abroad. As you know, we live in developed countries, we live in developed democracy. When we go back home, they see us as telling them what to do.
Okay.
They see us as arrogant, Mr. and Mrs. Know-it-all. And that's not what we are doing. What we are doing is we impacted them. We live in developed world. We know the good practices and we want to share it with people back home.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't receive that from a place of learning from us. They receive it, as you said, being arrogant. And most Nigerians, they love the money from us, from the diaspora. They know we are contributing hugely to the economy.
It's interesting that you say that they see us as arrogant, because sometimes even me, when I travel back home, they're like, why are you talking like that? Talk to us properly now. And I'm like, okay. Sometimes you can feel a bit ostracized, especially if you're British born and you're traveling back. You don't know, am I British? Am I Nigerian? Where do I fit in?
Well, it depends where you go. If you look at the private sector in Nigeria, the private sector, more than any other sector, has been engaged in diasporans. I know so many people in media, like you probably know as well, who were born. These were people who were born here, grew up here, went on a visit to Nigeria and said, you know what, I'm staying here.
I'm not going back.
And a lot of them are now in media in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I think if we need to kind of like classify it properly. The private sector, take us, and then if the Nigerians don't value us, maybe we should just stop remittances for 1 year. and we see what happens.
1 month.
And we are contributing immensely.
Yeah.
And like I said, visionary leadership should be able to realize that, look, if I look at the past few administrations, there were some stellar members of the cabinet, who were poached from the diaspora.
No, you're right.
Names like Okonjo-Iweala come to mind.
Yes.
The gentleman who was running the agriculture sector.
Kemi Adeosun.
And they did great work. And that really is what the elite diasporans do to any. So really, they do need diasporans, and I think we need to be voting.
Yeah, they do.
We should have voting rights. Ultimately,
that's another topic for another day. Let's talk about the Nigerian diaspora in Britain. That's where we are. Again, we're all parents. Yeah. There have been discussions about the Olas and Ades, not you guys personally, who are getting themselves into trouble. There's a kind of identity clash here, and we're seeing time and time again. Before, when I was growing up, our parents would blame it on the Jamaican kids. No. It's not the Jamaicans. A lot of Africans and Nigerian boys are getting themselves into so much trouble. Yes, we're brilliant, but yes, there are some issues in that area. What's going on?
I'm not going to stay here and just say it's just because of this or identity. It is a complex issue, but identity actually takes the top or number out of the complex issue that our kids are facing, the second or third generation of Nigerians.
But it's recent,
in
Sister
this
Susan.
country.
Why? Why is it so recent that these Nigerian boys
is,
are just reckless, some of them?
It is recent, but this has been happening.
Okay.
What we've seen for 10 years, I was delivering police engagement in central London, and I know the statistics from the police at the time. What happened was all those crimes were not reported. All those crimes were not about murder, so you don't hear about them. And there are a lot of engagement that have been done within the African communities. The spike in this knife crime that we have seen lately, it is a different story entirely. That as community, we need community response to it. Like I said, it is a complex issue.
It's a complex issue, Sister Susan, but where is it coming from, and why are so many of us knowing, I've seen on your social media, Sister Susan, how many times you're, kind of commemorating somebody who's been murdered, and it's a Nigerian boy, or we know the father. Why is Nigerians getting caught up in this?
I think we need to stress that they represent a minority
of
the community, a very, very, very tiny but critical, minority.
Yes.
And most of these problems, see, we first need to look at within our family structure now, which is evolving as diasporans. It keeps changing, perhaps more dynamic than the residents here. So you look at what types of Nigerians do we have in the UK? They fall into different income groups. They fall into different social classes. Most of these problems are also coming from a particular class where some parents need to earn so much more. They're taking their eyes off the ball, parents doing 2, 3, 4, at times 4-time jobs. Problems that perhaps the typical indigenous population don't have. Also, you have the elements of the press. Some tend to zone in a bit more on these problems, especially when they're ethnic based. And that's it in no way taking away or trying to diminish the problem we have. There certainly is a problem, but the numbers don't really reflect the real percentages that are doing great things in this country.
I take that point, Abbas. Let's talk about the celebratory stories then. Nigerian kids in the UK, they're overachieving. The ones that are overachieving, they're doing really well.
The Nigerian kids in the UK are overachieving, and that needs to be stressed. As Abbas mentioned, there are minority of kids that might be giving negative reputation about Nigeria now, but a lot of our kids are doing very well. When you go to Imperial, you go to Oxford, you go to Cambridge,
we must be there.
Our kids are there, and they're doing well. So we need to celebrate our kids. I know I mentor many young Nigerians who were second generation, and I know what they're doing in their, not just within their family, the way they're contributing to the wider UK communities.
You're right,
and
Sister
that
Susan.
needs to be celebrated
it does.
as well.
Abbas, you've been here for a few years now.
Just a few.
How has the Nigerian culture from back home penetrated into British culture? What have you seen? How have the streets of Britain changed?
Immensely. I run the Nigerian corner at the Carnival. That's a corner that's been in existence for 32 years. But over the last 10 years, or let's say 15, it started with music. The music kicked in a new sound, primarily coming out of, and I don't, as a Nigerian, we're not going to take the glory alone, because really
we're Pan-Africanists.
Exactly, it's an African thing, but Nigeria's played a major role in that. And the music kind of fed into the fashion. The fashion fed into the food. Jollof is now, if you don't have jollof, really, you don't have jollof. You get it? So we've seen it kind of all the elements, from food to fashion to music to movies, and that has impacted so strongly. If you check on YouTube, there's a gentleman who goes around different stations, English guy or Caucasian, playing his drums to Afrobeat music. You go into, I remember when I was in New York once, I went into Macy's about 9 years ago, and they were playing P-Square. Wow. And we're like, wow, now
it just hits you.
Now
you don't even recognize it.
It's no biggie. And even you look at the genre Afrobeats, it's now having offshoots into Afro swing, all these new elements that are even penetrating deeper. So it just tells you that the Nigerian diaspora has done great for itself. Very recently, there was a school where 90% of the students had A's, and the principal, the head man there is Nigerian, So it's across the board. And this is what we want to see in the motherland.
Sister Susan, you've lived in London for many, many years. How has Nigerian culture kind of penetrated into London streets?
I'll pick from something that I know a little bit about, and that is fashion. And I know Ankara is not originally from Nigeria, but Nigeria, Africa make it popular. But when you see, as you can see, I remember somebody sending me a WhatsApp message. There was this nicely made Ankara at Harrods selling for £1,500. And when you see many of my white friends, when I'm going to Nigeria, everybody want me to make an Ankara dress for them.
It's a good business.
It is a good business. And not just the dresses, the handbags. It's so popular. You see people carrying their rucksack with Nigerian handbags and Nigerian rucksacks. So we are actually, we are in the mainstream in this country. DJ Abbas mentioned jollof rice. In fact, a member of my household worked with Jaguar Land Rover, and I can tell you they do have an evening club, jollof rice club.
Wow. Okay. Make sure you ask them to invite me next time.
I'm
really
bringing a Land Rover for you too.
That's what I want. You know, typical Niger, always asking for more.
They come together and do jollof rice.
We're definitely embedded into society. Chicken. You can't get rid of us. That's it from me, Juliana Oluyinka, and my fabulous guests, Susan Fajana Thomas and DJ Abbas. Don't forget, guys, Noni's now online. Wherever you are in the world, go to www.yangatv.com to check out every single episode. Join me next time for more Noni Chat. Goodbye.